Some horror stories feel exaggerated, like someone wanted attention. Others feel different, quiet, heavy, like they shouldn't be told at all. Tonight, you'll hear 3 nights that changed 3 lives forever. A woman standing in the fog, an attic door that refused to stay shut, and a motel room that knocked back. If you hear something behind you while listening, don't turn around. Just keep listening. I was driving home late one winter night, the kind of night where the world feels paused. No cars, no wind. Even the snow seemed frozen in the air, like time itself had slowed down. The radio cut out miles back, leaving only the sound of my tires on the road and my own breathing. It was around 2:15 a.m. when my headlights caught something ahead of me. At first, I thought it was a sign, then a mailbox. Then I realized it was a person, a woman standing alone in the middle of the road. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't trying to flag me down. She was just there. Long gray coat, hair stiff with ice, her arms hanging at her sides, completely still. She didn't wave, she didn't step away from the road. She just stared directly into my headlights, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. I slowed down. I don't know why I didn't keep driving. Something about her felt wrong. Not aggressive, not threatening, just out of place, like she didn't belong to the road or the night. I blinked, and suddenly she was standing next to my window. I didn't see her move. I didn't hear footsteps. She was simply there, so close I could see cracks in her lips, so close I could see frost forming on the inside of the glass. Her face was pale, too pale, her eyes unfocused, like she was looking through me instead of at me. Her breath fogged the window, slowly forming 3 words: "Don't go home." My chest tightened, my hands locked around the steering wheel. I didn't ask questions, I didn't respond. I pressed the gas and drove away without looking back. The entire drive, I felt like something was sitting in the back seat. When I reached my apartment, police cars were parked outside, red and blue lights flashing against the walls. My door was broken, the place completely torn apart. An officer stepped toward me and said, "Whoever was inside left about 10 minutes ago." 10 minutes earlier, the exact moment I saw the woman in the fog. I never drove that road again, and I never forgot her face. Some warnings come from strangers. Others come from places we think are safe. And sometimes the danger isn't outside your home. It's waiting above it. My brother bought an old house in the countryside. Cheap, quiet, too quiet. The kind of place where silence feels heavy, like the walls are listening. The first night passed without a sound. The second night didn't. At 1:47 a.m., a soft click echoed through the hallway. Not loud, not sudden, careful. The attic latch. We stood there watching as the attic door slowly opened, not falling, not slipping, opening, as if someone inside had gently pushed it. My brother laughed nervously. "Old wood," he said. He closed the door. It opened again. He closed it harder. It opened again. We left it open after that. Neither of us wanted to test whatever was on the other side. Later that night, we heard footsteps above us. Not random, not animal-like. Slow, heavy, human, walking from one side of the attic to the other, stopping, then starting again. Every step perfectly spaced, like someone pacing. At sunrise, we gathered the courage to go upstairs. The attic was empty. No boxes moved, no furniture disturbed, no footprints, except one thing, a dusty handprint on the inside of the attic door, too large to be ours, too fresh to be old. We didn't talk about it. We didn't stay another night. We packed and left that house before noon. Some places keep their secrets overhead. Others hide them where people stay for just one night. I checked into a cheap motel for work, room 214, the kind of room where the air feels heavy, like someone just left and never fully did. The walls were thin, the lights flickered, the silence felt wrong. Around 2:06 a.m., I heard knocking, not on the door, on the wall beside my bed. 3 slow knocks. I waited, then knocked back, thinking it was another guest. 3 seconds later, the same pattern answered. Perfect rhythm, perfect timing. I called the front desk. The receptionist went silent. Then she said, "Sir, there is no room on that side of the wall." My stomach tightened. I pressed my ear to the plaster. Breathing. Slow. Close. So close I could feel warmth through the wall. Then the knocking started again. Not from the wall, from inside the closet. I didn't open it. I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my bag and ran, left everything behind. The next morning, the motel manager called. "We sealed that closet 5 years ago. No one should be able to get inside." But something did, and it wanted someone to knock back. If you want more true-style horror like this, stay close. Shadow Pulse is just getting started.
Some stories don't begin with screams, police reports, or headlines. They begin quietly, during ordinary nights, in familiar places, with people who believe they're completely alone. Tonight, you will hear 3 true-style horror stories told by those who survived encounters they were never supposed to experience. Different locations, different lives, but one shared truth. Something noticed them first. These are not urban legends. These are moments where reality slipped and something stepped through. Listen carefully, because once you recognize the signs, it may already be too late. I moved into the apartment because it was cheap, quiet, and recently renovated. No strange smells, no broken fixtures, no visible damage. The landlord told me the previous tenant had moved suddenly, which didn't bother me at the time. The first week passed without incident. No noises, no disturbances, nothing unusual enough to raise concern. That changed on the 8th night. I was sitting on my couch around 1:40 a.m., watching a muted TV screen when I heard a sound from the bedroom. It wasn't a crash or a footstep. It was my own voice, repeating a sentence I remembered saying earlier that day. The tone was perfect. The timing was exact, but I hadn't spoken out loud in hours. I checked the bedroom. Empty. The next night, it happened again, this time from the kitchen. My voice, whispering something I'd only thought, not said. That was when the fear set in. I unplugged the TV, shut my phone off, and sat in silence. That's when the apartment responded. A soft knock came from inside the walls. Not pipes, not settling. Knocks. 3 of them. Slow, intentional. Over the next several days, the apartment began anticipating me. Lights flicked on before I entered rooms. Doors closed themselves after I passed. My reflection in the bathroom mirror lingered half a second longer than my movements. I started sleeping with the lights on, but even then, I could hear breathing from behind the walls, syncing with my own. One night, I heard my voice again, this time speaking from directly behind my bedroom door. It said my name slowly, carefully, as if practicing. When I opened the door, the apartment was silent, but written faintly on the wall, as if traced by fingers through dust, were the words, "You sound better in here." I moved out the next morning without packing, Weeks later, I returned with the landlord to retrieve my things. The apartment was empty, completely stripped. No furniture, no fixtures, no signs anyone had ever lived there. Except for one thing. Written inside the closet, carved deeply into the wall, was my full name. I worked overnight security at a corporate office building that officially closed at 9 p.m. My job was simple: monitor cameras, check badge access, and patrol assigned floors every hour. The building had 22 floors. That number was printed everywhere. Elevators, blueprints, emergency signage. On my third week, something changed. During a routine patrol, the elevator paused between floors. The display flickered, then briefly showed a floor number I had never seen before: 23. The doors didn't open. The display corrected itself. I dismissed it as a glitch until the cameras picked it up. One of the hallway feeds showed a corridor I didn't recognize. Same carpet, same lighting, but longer, narrower. The camera angle was wrong, as if mounted lower than the others. I checked the system map. That camera wasn't listed. The following night, my badge registered access at 2:17 a.m. to floor 23. I was sitting at the desk when the log updated. I hadn't moved. Footage from that time showed someone walking the corridor, wearing my uniform, moving stiffly, stopping in front of doors that didn't exist on any blueprint. Each door had a nameplate, but the names were scratched out, as if removed intentionally. The figure stopped in front of the camera. It looked directly into the lens. The face was mine, but wrong. The expression didn't change. The eyes didn't blink. After that night, the building felt crowded. Elevators arrived already open. Footsteps echoed ahead of me during patrols. Sometimes the radio crackled with my own voice, reporting incidents I hadn't seen yet. I quit without notice. Months later, I received an email from the company's automated system, thanking me for continued overnight service and confirming my assigned patrol floor. Floor 23. When I moved into the townhouse, I noticed my neighbor immediately. His lights were always on. Every window, every night. No movement, no sound, just constant illumination. I assumed he worked nights or had insomnia. Then I realized something worse. He never left. No car, no deliveries, no visitors. Yet the lights never went off. Not even during storms or power outages. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I watched from my window. At exactly 3:03 a.m., all his lights turned off at once. The darkness lasted 3 seconds. Then every light turned back on, brighter than before. That's when I saw him standing in the window, too close to the glass, smiling without expression, staring directly at my house. After that, I noticed him everywhere. Reflections, darkened screens, the glass of my microwave, always behind me, never moving unless I wasn't looking. I stopped sleeping. Every night at 3:03, I heard knocking. Not on my door, but on the shared wall between our houses. Slow, measured, patient. One morning, I finally checked public records. The house next to mine had been condemned 12 years earlier after a fire. No residents listed since. No reconstruction permits issued. According to the city, the building shouldn't have been habitable. That night, the knocking came again. Closer this time. Louder. Written faintly on my side of the wall, as it pressed through from the other side, were the words, "You've been watching me too." I moved out 2 days later. The house was demolished the following month. Sometimes, when I wake up at night, my bedroom lights are already on. Some neighborhoods never sleep. Some floors hide secrets that were never meant to be discovered. And some apartments remember those who dared to enter. These stories linger long after the lights go out, twisting in the corners of your mind. Stay alert, listen closely, and dare to imagine. What you see tonight may follow you into the shadows of your own home. Comment your thoughts, share your fears, and subscribe if you want to uncover more tales that refuse to rest.
Some people think true horror comes from ghosts, but the real nightmare is when ordinary people vanish, see things they can't explain, or survive something that should have been impossible. Tonight, you're not getting one story. You're getting 3 true horror encounters that still haunt the people who lived them. If you think you're safe, just remember, they thought so too. It happened in 2017. A young woman named Kara L., living alone in Colorado, started hearing faint tapping sounds in the ceiling above her bedroom. At first, she ignored it. Old houses creak, pipes expand, the mind plays tricks at night. That's what she told herself. But the sounds got worse. Tap, tap, drag, drag, as if someone was moving above her head, slowly, deliberately. She called maintenance. They checked the attic. Nothing. But Kara began noticing things inside her home, shifting places. Her toothbrush moved, her cereal box left open, her blankets slightly pulled down in the morning. She thought she was losing her mind. Then, one night, around 2:40 a.m., she woke up to the sound of a soft, rhythmic breathing coming from inside her closet. Not the attic, not the walls, her closet. She froze, didn't move, didn't blink. The breathing grew louder, slow, heavy, as if someone was standing just inches away behind the sliding door. Kara ran, bolted out the front door, and called police. What they found was worse than anything she imagined. Inside the attic was a sleeping bag, food wrappers, a bottle filled with urine, and torn pieces of her clothing. Someone had been living there for weeks. Police estimated he came down at night to watch her sleep from the crack of her bedroom door. He entered through an unlocked window and never left. Kara moved out immediately, but she still says that sometimes when she closes her eyes, she remembers the breathing and how close the man came to revealing himself. Some nightmares live above you. Others follow you in the dark. In 2009, a hiker named Michael D. was backpacking in Oregon. He knew the trails well, a quiet place he used whenever life became too stressful. But on this trip, the forest felt different, quieter, heavier, as if the air itself was watching him. On the second night, while eating by the fire, he heard branches snapping behind him. Not animals. The steps were too slow, too intentional. He turned. No one. Later that night, his tent zipper slid halfway down while he was sleeping. Michael shot awake, heart racing. Footsteps ran into the trees. He convinced himself it was a dream until he saw the footprints the next morning. Bare footprints, a woman's size, leading deeper into the forest. He decided to leave early, but halfway back, a woman appeared between the trees, thin, barefoot, clothes torn, hair wild and tangled like she hadn't seen civilization in years. She stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes, then smiled. A slow, unnatural smile that stretched too far for comfort. Michael froze. He tried speaking, but she tilted her head like she didn't understand speech or didn't care. She took one step toward him, then another, her feet dragging lightly in the soil as if she'd forgotten how to walk. Michael ran, didn't look back. When he returned with rangers the next day, they found evidence someone had been living in a handmade shelter just a mile from where he camped. Inside were piles of bones, animal skins, and strings of hair braided together and hung like decorations. But the woman was never found. Michael never went hiking again. He still hears her voice sometimes in his dreams, even though she never said a word. Some things hide in the forest, but some things appear where you should be safest. In 2013, a traveling nurse named Alicia stayed at a small roadside motel in Nevada. It wasn't her first time there. Cheap, simple, quiet, nothing dangerous. But that night, she couldn't sleep. The room felt wrong, too still, too silent. At 1:19 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady. Tap, tap, tap. Alicia, a woman's voice, whispered, but she hadn't told anyone her name. She looked through the peephole. No one. Then she backed away. Then the knocking started again, this time from the wall behind the bed. 3 knocks, a long pause, 3 more knocks, like a message. She ran to the front desk. They checked the room next door. It was empty. The front desk worker went pale. "You're in room 17? "Yes." "Ma'am, we sealed that connecting door years ago. There's no one on the other side." Alicia insisted someone was knocking, so maintenance opened the sealed panel. Inside was a narrow crawl space filled with blankets, water bottles, and a small hole carved into the wall, perfectly positioned to watch guests sleep. Someone had been living inside the motel walls for months. Security found fresh footprints, but the person escaped through a rear exit and was never caught. Alicia quit traveling after that. She said the scariest part wasn't the knock, wasn't the voice, but knowing that the person had been inches from her the entire night. If you want more true horror stories like these, subscribe to Shadow Pulse. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that breathe quietly right behind your door.
New Year's Eve is supposed to feel hopeful, a new beginning, but not all New Year's nights are filled with joy. Some carry dark secrets that follow you into the next year. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 terrifying tales of New Year's Eve horrors. If you hear something behind you, don't turn around. Just keep listening. It was a quiet New Year's Eve, one of those rare nights when everything seems still, as if the world is waiting for the clock to strike midnight. But for Carla, it wasn't quiet. It was the night her life would change forever, even though she didn't know it yet. Carla had just moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It was her first New Year's in this new place, alone. Her family was far away, and she hadn't made many friends yet, so she decided to spend the evening watching the countdown on TV, hoping the noise would make her feel less alone. At 11:55 p.m., there was a knock at her door. She froze. No one should be there. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the hallway outside her apartment was always silent at night. The knocking persisted. She hesitated, her heart beating faster, but then opened the door, thinking it might be a neighbor. To her surprise, a man stood there, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quietly. "I'm just passing through, and I noticed your light on." Before Carla could respond, he stepped inside, brushing past her without asking, his presence filling the small room. Confused but too polite to stop him, she let him stay for a drink. Something about the man felt off. He kept staring at the clock, his hands trembling slightly, as if he was afraid of what would happen when midnight arrived. As the countdown hit midnight, the man stood up, his eyes wide. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he suddenly bolted out of the apartment and disappeared into the night. Carla was left in shock. She checked her door. It was locked. She checked the hallway outside. There was no one. But when she turned around, the TV showed an image of the man, his face on the news. He was wanted for violent robberies and had been missing for years. The strangest part? That apartment had been locked for months before Carla moved in. The last tenant had been murdered. No one should have been able to knock on her door, and yet someone had. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start, but for James and his friends, it became something far darker. They rented a cabin in the woods to escape the city and welcome the new year in silence. No distractions, just friends, snow, and a fire that barely warmed the cold air inside. At 11:50 p.m., they started the countdown together. The room was full of laughter and music, but something felt wrong. It was too quiet outside. The storm had passed hours ago, and the world felt frozen, like it was holding its breath. As they reached the final countdown, the lights flickered, and then the power went out. They laughed, thinking it was part of the cabin's charm, even though none of them really believed it. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps on the second floor. The problem? No one was up there. As knocking started from the ceiling above them, the laughter stopped. The sound was too real, too close to ignore. They stayed together until morning, barely speaking, afraid that any sound might bring the footsteps back. At sunrise, they packed and left. As they drove away, one of the friends glanced back. The lights were still on, and someone was standing in the window, watching them without moving. It was a busy New Year's Eve at a small bar in the city. The countdown played on the big screen, and everyone was celebrating. But for one bartender, the night would become a nightmare she would never forget. Clara had worked at the bar for years. She loved the festive atmosphere. But this year, something felt different, heavier, like a warning she couldn't explain. The bar was packed, but one man stood out. He sat alone, staring at the screen, barely blinking. As the clock hit 11:59 p.m., the man turned to Clara and said, "I need to tell you something. I'm not supposed to be here." She laughed nervously, thinking he was drunk. But as the final seconds ticked down, he stood up and walked out. No one noticed him leave. At midnight, the bar erupted in cheers. Claire's phone rang. It was the police. The man, they said, had been missing for over 20 years, a suspect in unsolved murders. The strange part? He had walked into the bar just 30 minutes before midnight, as if he had stepped out of another time. The mystery was never solved, and the man was never found again. Some nights don't just end when the clock strikes midnight. Some things never leave, and for others, the worst is yet to come. If you want more true-style horror stories like these, stay close. Shadow Pulse is just getting started. Some horror stories sound impossible. Others feel uncomfortable because they don't try to scare you. They just exist, quiet, ordinary, and that's what makes them hard to forget. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true-style horror stories, different places, different people, but all connected by one thing. Each of them discovered that something was wrong far too late. If you're listening alone, keep the lights on, and whatever you do, don't pause. The first night started like any other. I lived alone in a small apartment above a closed bakery. The building was old but cheap, and quiet enough that I could hear my own footsteps echo down the hallway. Around 2:20 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. Not loud, not sudden, just steady, like something repeating the same movement over and over. At first I thought it was water pipes. Then I realized it was coming from my front door. Scratching. Slow, deliberate scratching, low against the wood, as if something was testing how thick it was. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. After nearly a minute, the scratching stopped and was replaced by something worse. Breathing, not mine, not distant, right outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. After a few seconds, the breathing faded, followed by footsteps moving away down the hallway. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. But my door wasn't untouched. Long, thin scratch marks ran across the bottom panel, too deep to be accidental. The building manager later told me no one else lived on my floor. The bakery below had been abandoned for years. Whatever was breathing outside my door didn't belong there, and it never came back, which somehow made it worse. Some encounters don't escalate. They don't explode into violence. They simply stop, leaving you to wonder what would have happened if you had reacted differently. The second story began with curiosity. A group of hikers took a shortcut through a wooded trail that wasn't on any map. They found it by accident while exploring a national park late in the afternoon. The path looked worn, like it had been used recently, even though no signs marked it. They followed it for nearly 30 minutes before realizing the forest around them had gone completely silent. No birds, no wind, no insects. Ahead of them, the trail ended at a small clearing. In the center stood a wooden chair facing the trees. Nothing else. No campfire, no trash, just the chair. As they stood there, confused, one of them noticed footprints in the dirt. Bare footprints, too many to count, all leading toward the chair, none leading away. Then they heard a voice. It didn't come from the trees. It came from behind them. A low whisper repeating the same phrase, again and again, too distorted to understand. When they turned around, the trail they had used to enter the clearing was gone. Only dense forest stood behind them. Panic set in. They ran in random directions until one of them fell. When they stopped to help him up, the whispering stopped. The trail reappeared. They didn't question it. They ran until they reached the main park road. Rangers later told them there were no unofficial trails in that area. No clearings, no reports. But one ranger quietly asked them a question before leaving. "Did you see the chair?" When they asked what he meant, he refused to explain. Some places don't trap you forever. They just want to know you were there. The third story happened in a hospital. A night nurse working the late shift noticed something strange on the patient monitors. One heart rate kept appearing in empty rooms, room numbers that were closed for renovation. Each time she checked, the reading vanished. At first, she assumed it was a system glitch, but at exactly 3:10 a.m., the same heart rate appeared again, steady, slow, and strong, coming from a room at the end of the abandoned wing. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps echoing against the tile. The room door was open. The bed was empty. The monitor beside it was on, displaying a normal pulse. Confused, she reached for the screen. The moment she touched it, the heart rate spiked violently, then dropped to 0. Behind her, the door closed. She said she felt someone standing inches away from her back, close enough to feel warmth, close enough to hear breathing that didn't belong to her. She didn't turn around. She walked forward until she reached the door and pulled it open with shaking hands. Later that morning, maintenance confirmed something unsettling. That room's monitoring equipment had been removed weeks earlier. There was nothing in the room that should have been able to display a heartbeat. And according to hospital records, the last patient who died there passed away at exactly 3:10 a.m. Some horror stories end with answers. These don't. They linger, they wait. And sometimes, they remind you that just because something leaves no proof, doesn't mean it never happened. If you want more true-style horror stories like these, stay close. Shadow Pulse is just getting started. New Year's Eve is supposed to feel hopeful. A clean ending, a fresh beginning, a moment where everything bad stays behind and everything new feels possible. But some nights don't reset when the clock hits midnight. Some nights carry their darkness forward. Tonight you'll hear 3 true-style horror stories. All of them happened on New Year's Eve, 3 celebrations, 3 different places, and 3 moments that refuse to stay in the past. If you're listening to this alone, keep the volume low. And if you hear something nearby, don't turn around, just keep listening. I was working night security at a small roadside hotel on New Year's Eve. Nothing expensive, nothing memorable. Just a quiet place near the highway, where travelers stopped to sleep before continuing their journey. By 11:30 p.m., the lobby was empty. Most guests were already in their rooms, watching the countdown on television, waiting for midnight. At 11:47 p.m., the front doors opened. A woman walked in. She didn't look drunk. She didn't look lost. But she looked wrong. No coat, no bag. Just a thin black dress, like she'd stepped out of a party that never really began. She asked for a room. Her voice was calm, but distant, as if she was speaking from somewhere far away. I gave her the key to room 306. As she walked toward the elevator, I noticed something that still bothers me. She never blinked. At 11:58 p.m., the lights flickered, just for a second. When they came back on, I glanced at the security monitor. Room 306's door was open. I tried calling the room. No answer. Then midnight hit. Cheers exploded through the walls. Laughter, glasses clinking, fireworks echoing in the distance. I went upstairs. Room 306 was empty. No luggage, no shoes. No sign anyone had ever been there. But the bathroom mirror was fogged, written with a finger, just one sentence. I didn't make it to this year. Later that night, police told me something else. A woman matching her description had died in a car accident on that same highway, 3 hours earlier. New Year's is about moving forward. But sometimes, something tries to follow. And sometimes, it stays right where you thought you were safe. A group of friends and I rented an old mountain house for New Year's Eve. No neighbors, no cell service. Just snow, music, and a fireplace. It felt perfect. At 11:55 p.m., we turned off the lights and gathered in the living room. Someone started the countdown on their phone. 10, 9, 8. When we reached 5, the lights upstairs turned on by themselves. 4, 3, we all froze. 2, 1, Happy New Year. Everyone laughed. Someone joked that the house was welcoming the year. Then we heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, walking across the upstairs hallway. No one was upstairs. The footsteps stopped directly above us. Then, a knock from the ceiling. One knock. Silence. No one volunteered to check. We stayed together until morning, pretending nothing was wrong. At sunrise, we packed and left. As we drove away, one of my friends turned around. The upstairs lights were still on, and someone was standing in the window, watching us leave. Some places don't want to be left behind, and some nights don't end when the sun comes up, especially when someone is still waiting on the other side of midnight. I worked overnight at an emergency call center on New Year's Eve. Most calls that night were predictable. Drunk accidents, noise complaints, fireworks gone wrong. At 12:12 a.m., my phone rang. The caller was whispering. She gave her name, her address. Then she said, "I think someone is in my apartment." I told her to stay on the line. Through the phone, I could hear fireworks outside her window, people celebrating somewhere far away. Then I heard another sound, breathing, not hers. She whispered, "He's standing behind me." The line went dead. Police arrived at her address in under 6 minutes. The apartment was empty. No forced entry, no struggle, no one inside, except for her phone, still on the table, still connected. The report later revealed something else. The woman had been reported missing 2 years earlier, on New Year's Eve. Some people celebrate the new year, others survive it, and some never leave it behind. If you want more true-style horror stories like these, stay close. Shadow Pulse is just getting started. The snow fell silently over the quiet town, blanketing every rooftop and street lamp in a deceptive calm. Christmas lights twinkled warmly in windows, while families celebrated inside, unaware of the shadows creeping just beyond their doors. Tonight, you will hear 3 stories that unfold on Christmas Eve, tales of true terror hidden behind festive cheer. Someone or something is watching, waiting, and when the clock strikes midnight, the holiday spirit turns into a nightmare you cannot escape. Keep your lights on, for the darkness is patient and knows your every secret. Olivia had always loved Christmas, decorating her small apartment with garlands, twinkling lights, and the scent of cinnamon candles. But this year, as she returned home from work on Christmas Eve, something felt off. The streets were quieter than usual, the snow unusually thick, muffling her footsteps. When she entered her apartment, she found her door ajar, even though she was certain she had locked it. A faint chill brushed against her cheek, making her shiver. Inside, the tree lights flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows that seemed almost alive. Olivia shook her head, thinking it was exhaustion from the long day. Yet when she hung her coat, she noticed footprints in the snow tracked through her living room, too small to be hers, yet fresh and wet. Her cat hissed at the corner, hair bristling, staring at something invisible. She picked up her phone. Messages from an unknown number. Each text contained phrases only Olivia would recognize. "I see you putting the star on the tree. The cinnamon scent awakes me. Do you hear the music that isn't playing?" Trembling, she tried to call her friends, but no one answered. The lines were dead. A low sound began, almost imperceptible. A whisper, like a cold breeze brushing her ears. "Merry Christmas, Olivia," it said, echoing across the room. She spun around. Nothing. But the ornaments on the tree rattled, moving as if someone invisible had touched them. Hours passed. Every time she tried to sleep, she felt eyes watching from the corners. The shadows stretched longer, moving closer, yet dissolving whenever she tried to focus on them. The snow outside began to melt, but strange footprints appeared inside her apartment, tiny, precise, forming circles around her bed. By midnight, Olivia was frantic. The whispers grew louder, rhythmic, chanting fragments of holiday carols in a voice she had never heard before. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer, gripping it tightly as the lights flickered violently. The room grew colder. Frost formed on the window panes from the inside. Suddenly, the Christmas tree toppled over, scattering ornaments like shattered eyes across the carpet. In the reflection of a fallen bauble, she saw a figure, tall, featureless, cloaked in shadow, standing behind her. Heart hammering, she turned, nothing. But when she looked back, it was closer, its form shifting, merging with the darkness. Olivia fled to her neighbor's apartment, pounding on the door. No answer. Every door in the hall was empty, dark, silent. The sound of sleigh bells echoed from nowhere, taunting, distorted, growing louder. She ran back to her apartment, desperate, only to find the door locked from the outside. She was trapped. Hours felt like days. The whispers told stories of her past, her secrets and her fears. They knew her family traditions, the songs she sang while baking cookies, the presents she had planned to hide. Every shadow seemed to have a consciousness, circling, waiting for her to make a mistake. As dawn approached, the figure revealed itself fully, its face a hollow void, decorated faintly with frost patterns, its eyes glowing dim red like the embers of a dead fireplace. Olivia screamed, but no sound came out. The shadow extended tendrils, brushing against her skin, freezing her in place. At the first chime of morning, the shadow vanished, leaving only a note beneath the toppled tree. Next year, I will join the feast. Olivia never celebrated Christmas the same way again, never decorated, never trusted silence, and every snowfall reminded her of the darkness watching, patient, waiting for the next holiday. And as the snow melts and the morning light breaks, remember, what hides behind twinkling lights and festive cheer may not vanish with the dawn. Some horrors are patient, and Christmas brings them closer. Ethan had volunteered to work the night shift at the city hospital every Christmas Eve, believing it was a noble way to spend the holidays. The building was usually quiet, dimly lit, and tonight was no exception. Corridors stretching endlessly under the flickering fluorescent lights. He hummed a carol quietly to himself, trying to ease the tension from a long day of surgeries and patient care. Around midnight, he heard faint laughter echoing from the empty hallways. Children's voices, soft, playful, yet distorted. He paused, heart thudding. The nurse's station was deserted. The sound seemed to follow him, bouncing from one corridor to another, impossible to locate. Ethan tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew. They called his name, repeating it softly, then harshly, then in a melodic chant as if mocking him. He checked the security cameras. The feeds showed empty hallways. Yet when he walked past the monitors, he swore he saw fleeting figures darting behind patients' rooms, vanishing the moment he looked directly. By 1 a.m., the hospital felt alive in a way that terrified him. The Christmas decorations, paper snowflakes and small tinsel garlands, shook violently without wind. The faint scent of pine mixed with something acrid, like burnt sugar. Doors that should have been locked creaked open, revealing rooms with furniture rearranged and shadows darting just out of sight. Ethan heard footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate, yet when he turned, no one was there. He entered the ICU and noticed that the patient's monitors were displaying numbers that didn't make sense. Hearts beating too fast, blood pressure dropping to impossible lows, all perfectly synchronized with a soft hum of a Christmas carol coming from nowhere. He tried calling security, but the phones were dead. The intercom crackled to life with static, then words, "You shouldn't have stayed." The voice was hollow, childlike yet ancient, reverberating through the hallways. Ethan ran toward the stairwell, but every door he opened led back into the same corridor, looping endlessly. At 2 a.m., he saw them, the children. not living children, but pale, distorted apparitions in tattered Christmas pajamas, their eyes black voids reflecting nothing. They floated just above the floor, moving silently, circling the nurse's station, pointing at Ethan, whispering, "It's our night, it's our tree, you cannot leave." Ethan's flashlight flickered and died. He stumbled in darkness, feeling something brush against his ankle. When he looked down, a hand, frozen, icy, translucent, grabbed his ankle. He screamed, yanked it free, but felt a trail of cold cling to him like a second skin. Hours passed like centuries. Ethan found himself in the hospital chapel, kneeling, though he didn't remember walking there. Candles burned in impossible patterns, spelling messages he could not read. The organ played faintly, though no one touched the keys. Shadows of choir children moved along the pews, their whispers forming one continuous chant. "Stay, stay, stay. It's Christmas with us forever." By 5 a.m., the snow outside had melted slightly, sunlight beginning to creep through the frosted windows. The apparitions receded, but Ethan was left with the chilling sensation that they hadn't gone. They were waiting, patient, tethered to him. Every Christmas Eve afterward, Ethan felt the hospital's corridors whisper his name. Even in distant hospitals where he transferred, the children's voices haunted him, reminding him that some horrors are bound to a night, and Christmas was theirs, not his. And when the bells ring and laughter fills your town, remember those unseen eyes that watch, the echoes of laughter that never fade, and the nights when the children of Christmas might not be what they seem. Mara had always loved Christmas, but this year she decided to spend the holiday alone in her family's old countryside cabin. The snow was heavy, blanketing the surrounding forest, muffling all sound. The cabin, familiar yet oddly cold, seemed alive with memories she couldn't place. She unpacked her gifts, lit the fireplace, and tried to ignore the unease creeping up her spine. By evening, shadows danced across the walls from the flickering firelight, forming shapes that seemed almost human. The wind outside howled through the cracks in the windows, but she swore she heard knocks on the door. 3 short, deliberate taps, then silence. She called out, but no answer came, only the echo of her own voice bouncing back unnaturally. Mara checked the attic, her childhood memories pressing against her mind. Dusty toys, old decorations, and forgotten letters littered the space, but one item caught her eye. A small hand-carved doll she didn't remember owning. Its eyes, black and glossy, seemed to follow her. She put it down, only to find it later on the hearth, facing her, untouched. As night deepened, she heard whispers in the hallway. Not words, just soft sounds, like someone breathing against her ears, close and deliberate. She wrapped herself in a blanket, trying to convince herself it was the wind, the snow, the cold. But then the Christmas tree lights flickered, not in the usual pattern, but in sequences that seemed to mimic her own heartbeat. Suddenly, the ornaments rattled violently, one by one, and the shadows in the room stretched unnaturally. Mara's phone rang, a number she did not recognize. She answered and heard the soft, raspy voice of a child. "You forgot us. We waited. We remembered." The line went dead. She checked the phone. No calls logged. Panicked, Mara tried leaving the cabin, but the snow had formed walls around the property, impossible to cross. Every step she took, the sound of tiny footsteps followed her, circling, growing louder, yet unseen. The wind carried a faint melody, her childhood carols, but twisted, off-key, sinister. Hours passed like minutes. Mara found herself in the living room, where the fireplace had gone out, the air freezing cold. The doll was now on the mantel, one arm raised, pointing at the front door. She stepped forward, intending to remove it, but froze. In the mirror across the room, she saw dozens of reflections of herself, all smiling, all whispering in unison, "Stay with us, Mara. Stay forever." Trembling, she ran to the kitchen, but the doors warped, elongating, bending reality around her. Shadows pressed in from the corners, forming vague human shapes, murmuring chants she couldn't understand. She tried calling 911, but the signal was gone, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. Mara remembered the letters in the attic. They were warnings. Her family had known about this for generations, but she never read them. The handwriting was old, faded, yet clear. On the night of the longest dark, the children of Christmas awaken. Do not be alone. They remember, they wait, they take what belongs to them. As the clock struck midnight, Mara felt cold hands on her shoulders. She turned slowly. A circle of children stood around her, pale, their eyes black voids, their smiles unnatural. She screamed, but the sound seemed to be swallowed by the room itself. Time blurred. By morning the snow was calm, the cabin silent. Mara was gone, and the doll sat by the hearth, smiling. The forest seemed to exhale, shadows receding, but only until the next Christmas Eve. Some traditions are not meant for the living to witness. Some carols are sung by voices that should remain silent, and some cabins hold memories that are hungrier than the cold itself. Be careful whose invitation you accept this Christmas, or you might never leave. Some horror stories begin with a single call in the dead of night, a sound you hope never reaches your ears. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true-style horror stories. Different people, different places, yet all share one chilling truth. Someone or something is watching before you even notice. Keep your lights on and do not pause. Emily had just moved into a downtown apartment. The first night was quiet, peaceful, but just after midnight, her phone rang. The caller ID read, "Blocked number." Trembling, she answered. No voice, only heavy breathing, rhythmic, deliberate. Then a whisper. I see you. She hung up. A prank? A stalker? She didn't know. The calls escalated nightly. Breathing became closer, distorted, sometimes followed by faint whispers of her name. They knew her routines, her favorite shows, even thoughts she never voiced. Objects in her apartment shifted. Books, cups, personal items, not by anyone she could see. Emily attempted to record audio, video, anything. The footage revealed shadows, subtle movements at the corner of the frame, blurred shapes. Once, she woke to the smell of smoke and her bedroom door slightly ajar, despite locking it herself. Notes appeared on her fridge, written in her handwriting. Don't sleep, watch. The fear followed her to work, the grocery store, even outside. Shadows lingered at a distance, shapes appearing in reflections in windows and mirrors. The calls persisted even after changing her number. Each call, longer than before, closer, as if the presence could step inside her home without being seen. One night, Emily awoke to a voice whispering directly in her ear, "You can't escape me." She tried to move but was paralyzed with fear. Objects shifted, lights flickered, and she could hear her own heartbeat amplified in the room. The presence was aware, intelligent, patient, and persistent. Her friends noticed changes. Emily became withdrawn, avoiding phone calls, skipping work. One evening, she returned home to find her apartment door wide open, lights on, yet no one inside. Every closet, cabinet, and room checked. Nothing, except faint imprints in dust that resemble footprints leading to her bedroom. The block calls continued at random intervals, now accompanied by texts, fragments of sentences, names of childhood pets, places she visited, each message more specific, personal. Emily could no longer sleep with windows open. The air itself seemed heavy, oppressive, thick with an unseen presence. Even when she traveled, renting hotels or staying with friends, the blocked number reached her. The voice whispered through voicemail messages she never opened, yet she could hear it echo in her mind. Shadows appeared on hotel walls, moving independently, waiting in corners. Her pets reacted strangely, hair bristling, growls low and threatening, staring at nothing. Emily set up cameras, night vision, motion detection, but the recordings always showed empty rooms, only faint glimmers, fleeting movements, something that could be brushed off as a shadow, but she knew better. One night she woke to her apartment filled with low, guttural breathing, footsteps pacing her living room in slow rhythm. The fridge door creaked open, cupboards rattled, lights dimmed and flared. A note appeared on the floor. "I am here." She swore she hadn't moved from her bed. Emily left the city, changing her number, her home, even her work. Yet the feeling followed her. Every time she entered a new space, she felt it. The awareness, watching, patient. Even in broad daylight, in crowded streets, shadows seemed to move unnaturally. A fleeting glance, a dark figure at the edge of vision, gone when she turned fully. Months later, Emily returned to visit old friends. At night, her phone rang. Block number. She froze. This time, a recording played, her own voice, whispering her secrets she'd never spoken aloud. Some horrors begin with a whisper, a single call, and they grow in the shadows, patient and intelligent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike fear into your very life. Jason worked late and often relied on ride-sharing apps to get home. One night, he requested a car. The app confirmed, yet the vehicle that arrived wasn't listed. An old black sedan, unmarked, windows tinted. The driver smiled faintly, eyes cold. As Jason entered, he noticed the mirrors reflected his face differently, distorted. He told himself it was the fatigue, the long hours, the darkness. Yet, as the car moved, the street seemed unfamiliar, even though he recognized the city perfectly. The driver never spoke, but he hummed, low and rhythmic, almost matching Jason's heartbeat. The GPS on his phone malfunctioned. The route shown was impossible. Passing alleys, closed roads, dead ends. Every turn led deeper into deserted areas. Jason reached for his phone to call for help. The signal disappeared. He tried to exit the car at the next stoplight, but the doors locked automatically. Panic set in as the driver's gaze remained fixed, unwavering, studying him. Outside, shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, flickering under the streetlights. Every passing car was empty. When Jason's reflection caught the driver's eyes, he saw something wrong. Too dark, too hollow, almost not human. A whisper echoed inside the car, though the windows were up. "You shouldn't have called me." Jason spun around. Nothing. The streets were silent. Only the hum of the engine and the growing dread in his chest. Minutes stretched like hours. The driver spoke only once, voice calm, almost soothing. "You can't leave. Not yet." Jason's hand shook, gripping the seat. He tried opening the door, but it resisted. The car moved faster, twisting, turning, as if the roads themselves bent around it. Jason noticed symbols scratched into the dashboard, glowing faintly, impossible to explain. Every stoplight flickered, spelling words in a language he didn't know, but somehow felt threatening. He glimpsed fleeting reflections of other passengers in the rearview mirror, all gone when he looked fully. He remembered the app never logged the ride. No notifications, no records. Friends who checked the app said, "No ride today, Jason." Yet he was inside it, trapped, moving further from the familiar streets. Suddenly the car stopped in a deserted lot. A single street lamp illuminated a figure in the distance, waiting. Jason wanted to flee, but his legs wouldn't move. The driver turned slightly, whispering, "You were meant to see me." The air became thick, as if the shadows themselves breathed. Jason's phone buzzed violently, blocked calls from an unknown number. The figure outside seemed to react, nodding, almost approving. When Jason finally reached the edge of the lot, the figure was gone. The driver smiled faintly, and the city returned to normal. GPS worked, streets familiar, lights functioning, but the memory, the feeling, the awareness of being followed lingered. Even days later, he saw the sedan at night, parked across the street, empty, engine off. But the hum he remembered at night inside his mind never left. Every ride since, Jason double-checked the app. Every unfamiliar vehicle, every tinted window, every silent driver. He remembered the car that shouldn't have existed. Some journeys seem ordinary, but when darkness rides with you, the roads twist and reality bends. Be careful which rides you take. Some drivers never truly leave. Mark moved into a high-rise apartment downtown. The building seemed ordinary. Neighbors polite, hallways clean, elevators functional. Yet, he heard whispers at night, faint and distant, coming from apartments long abandoned. He noticed one particular unit on the 12th floor, apartment 1204. Lights flickered intermittently, though no one was listed as living there. Mail piled up in the box, undisturbed for months. Sometimes, Mark felt someone watching as he passed the hallway. Late one evening, he saw a figure inside 1204, a man, motionless, standing by the window. Mark rubbed his eyes. The man remained, eyes fixed forward. When he blinked, the man vanished, but the air felt colder. Days passed. Elevator doors sometimes stopped randomly, opening to reveal empty hallways, yet the faint sound of footsteps echoed inside. Mark started seeing the man in reflections, in mirrors in the lobby, in the windows across the hall, always the same posture, always silent. Neighbors dismissed his concerns. "No one's there," they said. "That apartment has been empty for years." But Mark noticed signs of occupancy. Faint smoke, cold drafts, moved furniture in the storage rooms, and faint scribbles on old walls that disappeared the next day. One night, Mark entered the elevator with the intent to confront the man. As it ascended, the lights flickered. When the doors opened, 1204 appeared occupied, curtains drawn, faint silhouettes moving, though the apartment had been empty for years. Mark felt compelled to enter. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick, oppressive. Shadows moved in corners, barely visible. He heard a voice, low, almost a breath. "You're here, finally." He turned. The man stood at the far end of the apartment, tall, impossibly still. Mark's pulse raced. The floorboards creaked under his weight, though no one else moved. When Mark tried to back away, he realized the hallway outside had changed. Walls twisted, doors misaligned, hallways endless. Mark's phone had no signal. Calls to friends went unanswered. Every image he took with his camera showed only static or distorted figures. The man seemed aware of his every action, appearing wherever Mark turned. The following nights, Mark tried staying away. Yet, at 3:17 a.m., precisely, he would hear soft knocks on his door, faint footsteps pacing outside his apartment, sometimes whispers, "Why leave when you belong here?" Mark tried moving out. Boxes disappeared, doors wouldn't lock, keys didn't work. The man, somehow, was always inside the building, watching, waiting. Even when the building was empty, the presence remained. Months later, maintenance found signs of life in 1204. Footprints, fresh cigarette ash, lights that had been switched on and off. Cameras showed only Mark entering, never leaving, yet his neighbors insisted they saw the man wandering the hallways. Eventually, Mark stopped fighting. He left a note in the lobby. If anyone reads this, beware. Some tenants never leave. Even now, new residents report shadows in 1204, soft whispers echoing in hallways, cold drafts in empty rooms, and sometimes someone feels a pair of eyes staring, never blinking, always patient. Some horrors never end. They linger in empty apartments, in reflections, in the corners of your mind. Shadow Pulse brings you stories that might be closer than you think. Stay alert and never ignore what you feel in the dark. Some killers don't run, they don't chase, they don't make mistakes. They plan quietly, they learn routines, they memorize habits, they wait for the moment when you stop paying attention. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true-style horror stories told by people who survived encounters they were never meant to walk away from. Different places, different lives, but one shared truth. Someone noticed them first, and once that happens, it's usually already too late. I live on the 3rd floor of a small apartment building with only 6 units. It's the kind of place where nothing ever changes. Same neighbors, same sounds, same quiet routine. That's why the footsteps stood out. Every night, without fail, at exactly 2:11 a.m., someone walked down the hallway. The sound was unmistakable. Shoes against old tile, slow and deliberate, not rushed, not drunk, not careless. The footsteps always stopped right in front of my door. At first, I assumed it was coincidence, someone checking the wrong apartment, someone confused, but the timing never changed. Not once, always 2:11. What bothered me most wasn't the sound, it was what didn't happen after. The footsteps never continued down the hall. They never turned back. There was no door opening, no keys, no elevator, just silence. After a week, sleep became impossible. I started leaving my lights on. I avoided walking past my door at night. I even changed my schedule, coming home later, hoping to break whatever pattern had formed. It didn't matter, the footsteps adapted. One night I checked the hallway security footage. The audio clearly picked up the steps stopping at my door, but the video showed nothing. No shadow, no movement, no person. The next night I stayed awake, sitting on my couch, lights off, phone in my hand. At 2:11, the steps came, then something new, breathing, slow, controlled, right outside my door, and then a whisper, calm and almost amused. Still pretending you don't notice me? I didn't call the police. I didn't open the door. I sat there shaking until morning. 3 days later, maintenance found a man living inside the building's unused service room. No lease, no ID, just supplies and a notebook. Inside were pages filled with dates, times, apartment numbers. Every time was 2:11 a.m. My apartment number was circled, twice. Some killers hide close. Others choose places we trust without question. Places that stay open all night. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station off a highway most people avoided. The kind of place where the silence feels heavier after midnight. At around 3 a.m., a man walked in. No car pulled up, no engine sound, just the door opening. He didn't look rushed, he didn't look tired. He stood by the drinks cooler, staring at the glass like he was watching something move inside it. I asked if he needed help. He smiled and said, "Not yet." He wandered the aisle slowly, too slowly. Every time I turned around, he was closer to the counter, closer to me. He never picked up an item, never checked prices, never left. At 4:17 a.m., the lights flickered. When they came back on, he was gone. Relief washed over me until I noticed the bathroom door slightly open. Later that morning, police arrived. A truck driver had been found behind the station, killed hours earlier. Weeks later, detectives showed me surveillance footage. The man at the counter paused and looked directly into the camera, smiling. He wasn't a customer. He was deciding. Not every killer watches silently. Some want to be seen. I cleaned offices at night. Same building, same floor, same routine. One night, as I finished near the exit, a man stepped out of a dark office, pale, nervous. His eyes kept darting toward the hallway. "Can you lock the door?" he asked. I told him I always did. He shook his head. "No, lock it now." Before I could ask why, he whispered, "He doesn't like open doors." The lights went out. I ran. Police arrested a man hiding in the stairwell, a serial killer using the building after hours. The man who warned me, he had died months earlier. The last thing he did was try to save someone else. Which story stayed with you the longest? Story 1, 2, or 3? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more true style horror stories like these, subscribe. Because some stories only get worse the second time you hear them. Some horror stories don't scream at you. They creep in slowly. They leave marks you cannot see, but you feel them deep inside. Tonight, you'll hear 3 real style horror stories. Different places, different people, but all of them share one truth. Something was terribly wrong before they even realized it. Keep your lights on, and whatever you do, don't pause. Mia moved into a downtown apartment, excited for a new start. Her roommate wasn't supposed to arrive for another week, but from the very first night, strange things began to happen. Books she hadn't touched were slightly out of place. Coffee mugs appeared in the sink that she didn't use. And sometimes, the apartment door felt ajar, even though she locked it securely. The first night, she woke to a faint tapping on her laptop. The screen glowed in the dark, displaying a document she hadn't opened. Her heart raced. Footsteps shuffled across the hardwood floor, soft, deliberate, and unrelenting. She froze. Every instinct screamed to move, but she remained seated, listening. The tapping continued, like someone impatiently waiting. "Who's there?" she whispered, voice trembling. No answer, just the sensation of eyes watching her. Shadows flickered in corners of her vision. She reached for her phone, the light barely cutting through the darkness. Nothing, but she felt it, the awareness of a presence, conscious and patient. Days turned into nights, and Mia began noticing more signs. Messages appeared on her phone from unknown numbers. "You're being watched." Visitors reported hearing soft whispers, seeing shapes dart past walls. She recorded audio, video, but nothing captured the presence, only a growing sense of dread. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night to faint breathing near her bed, slow and deliberate, even when she was alone. One night, she awoke to a faint smell of smoke. The kitchen lights flickered. A note appeared on the fridge, written in her handwriting, "Don't sleep, watch." She didn't remember writing it. Her pulse pounded. Every nerve screamed, telling her this wasn't a prank or a hallucination. The apartment itself was alive, aware. Mia attempted to leave, but when she packed, items would mysteriously shift or vanish, forcing her to search every corner repeatedly. She set up cameras. The footage captured shadows and vague movements, blurred, impossible to define, but no human forms. Each recording ended with faint whispers echoing softly, almost like a voice in the wind. "Stay, watch, alone." Eventually Mia moved out, but the fear lingered. Some nights when she closed her eyes, she swore she could still hear the soft tapping, the whispers, the shadows moving silently behind her. Each new apartment she visited felt different, safe, quiet, yet she could never fully escape the sensation that something was following, observing. Transition 1. Some presences don't knock. They don't announce themselves. They linger, waiting for attention you hope never comes. And sometimes they follow you, quietly, patiently, for the rest of your life. Ethan worked late nights and took the last train home. The station was nearly empty, the cold concrete echoing his footsteps. A man lurked in the shadows, coat long, hat pulled low, face hidden. At first, Ethan ignored him, but the man followed, silent, always just a few steps behind. On the train, he appeared in the same car. Ethan could see nothing except a piercing gaze. The familiarity was unsettling, like the man had been waiting for him. As the train rattled through dark tunnels, whispers floated through the car, faint, distorted, repeating, "Don't look back." Ethan dared a glance. The man was gone, but wet footprints traced Ethan's path, leading from the doors, following each step perfectly. Ethan's hands shook. Every tunnel, every corner seemed alive. A shadow would flicker across the seats, a faint reflection in the window he could never explain. Weeks later, security footage was checked. Only Ethan appeared on the cameras. No stranger. Weeks later, he discovered the man matched descriptions of a person linked to disappearances along the line, yet no evidence remained. The chilling realization, he had been followed by someone who was never supposed to exist in the same space-time. Additional details. Ethan later recounted how the lights on the train flickered in patterns. Sometimes the flickers seemed to spell words he couldn't understand. Every passenger he imagined seeing faded into darkness before he could recognize them. The air was cold, heavier than it should have been, as if the tunnels themselves were alive and breathing. Danger doesn't always make a sound. It doesn't always show itself. Sometimes it simply waits, breathing quietly behind you, in the corners of your mind, until you realize too late it was never gone. Lena worked as a night janitor in an old hospital wing. Most nights were quiet, but in a sealed, empty room, monitors occasionally beeped. She dismissed it, until one night at 3:17 a.m., the sound changed. It became rhythmic breathing, close, almost tangible. She called out, "Is someone there?" The hallway remained empty, but the air grew colder, heavier, as if the room itself exhaled. A shadow passed across the doorway, tall, impossibly thin, then vanished. Lena felt watched, chilled to the bone. Weeks later, she discovered the last patient in that room had died exactly at 3:17 a.m., years before. Nurses reported shadows, unexplained sounds, feelings of being watched. No one entered the room, yet the presence remained. Additional expansion. Each night, Lena noticed small things, monitors flickering, the sound of wheezing even in empty corridors, fleeting reflections in stainless steel surfaces, doors opening and closing quietly. She felt the walls breathing, pulsing with a life of their own. Sometimes she would hear footsteps pacing back and forth, yet no one else was in the wing. The hospital itself seemed to remember the tragedies that occurred within it. Some horrors leave no proof, yet they linger, waiting for your memory to remember them. Shadow Pulse brings you real encounters like these. Stay close and experience the next chilling story before it finds you. Remember, these aren't tales, these are whispers of the real world, waiting to be noticed.